looks like we're getting to about 1/4 past. Off you go. I might just bring that up a little bit more, and then we're good to go. It's as good as it's going to get, I guess. Chat. Welcome. Hey, everybody. Hi there, Instagram. Thanks a lot for coming. I'm also on YouTube at the same time, which is a wider sort of set. I'm just about to start now. This video is about how to set up your own vacuum press. A very simple way to set up your own or make your own vacuum press. It's very simple to do, but there are some things that you'll definitely need. What I like about vacuum presses is that they're easy. They're very relatively affordable. There's some ready-made kits or sets available, which is like vacuum bags. But what I like about them is that you can do shaped work and create templates and molds and jigs for them for making furniture, and also for very simply pressing your veneer work, your veneers. So what I'm going to show you today will be this vacuum, where you will be able to use that to actually, that's what I do nowadays, is use this to actually vacuum my marquetry and my parquetry. So with that said and done, what I do like about marquetry is that it's not a big setup. Excuse me. I have this here, which is my work table, and it's a center bead table. It folds away. It's a maximum size of about 90 centimeters. And it was the reason why I used to like it when I used to work in the luxury yachting was I could forward it away. It could go in the back of my car. So I would work in the factory, making the component parts. And then they could say, look, tomorrow you're working on location. You're working on the yacht in the yard. And therefore I could pack away my table and off I would pop. So what I'm trying to say is, for you to do marquetry or to do this, you don't actually need a lot of space. All you need is something stable like this and a cutting mat. Now, the reason why I say this is because this here is my marquetry table, and it's also my work table, but it's also my vacuum press. So let's get into it. On top of this table, I've got some sheets of just ply, simple ply, very thick hardboard. I think it's like 4, maybe 3.5, 4 mil thick. It's just standard sheet material. It's nothing fancy. I have another one here, which just fit, makes it all flat. And this is my rubber sheet. It's called Power Rubber. Power Rubber. And it's I don't know if it's a... Now, when I bought this many years ago, so it's very flexible. Yeah, it's very flexible. It's quite old. I've had it for quite a few years. Let's have a look how thick it is. Let's have a look. This is a set of calipers, by the way. Yeah, 3.9, 4 mil. This is a bit thicker here. 4.2. So there's a little bit of irregularity in the piece, but it doesn't matter. When I bought this, I actually bought it for when I was making the packaging for my mirror art, and I would vacuum press my mirrors to protect them from the journey while they traveled around the world. So I designed this table, or this particular vacuum table, to actually help me deal with that particular problem. So when I bought the power rubber, it didn't need to be too fine. Now, looking back, if I was to do this again, I would probably buy 2mm power rubber, because this is quite, although it's pretty hard and tough, you are getting a restriction on the sort of curvature, on the curve that you need. So I would definitely now go for about 2mm power rubber. And with that said and done, I can get more flexibility out of it. This is okay, but it could do with being a little thinner. That would be my advice. So I'll be going for 2mm power rubber. And if you contact the company, they have different lengths and different widths. I think this one's about 1 meter or so. And you just basically give them how much you want, and they'll ship it to you. So this is the power rubber. It's an essential part of this particular vacuum press. This is not your typical sort of vacuum press where you put it in a bag. Let's roll him up, and then we can get to the next stage of what we're trying to achieve here. Let's just put him over here. Now, of course, we would do that. So this is my bed, my vacuum bed. It's MDF. It's 18mm MDF. You can go for thicker MDF if you want. And by the way, if you've got any questions, I'll try to answer the questions at the end of the session. For Instagram, it's quite a sort of vertical image, and for on the YouTube, all about marquetry, it's like you see the full table. Okay, so you see these grooves. It's MDF. It's been machined in, so it's been drawn out first, and it's been machined in with a hand router and a special round cutter. Now, there's a reason why I do that. And by the way, the lacquer that I put on this, it was a water-based lacquer. It was a flooring lacquer, actually. And I built maybe 3 or 4 coats up. I prefer it when it's shiny, when it's very glossy. And the reason is because you want that gloss on there so that you're getting sort of traction. You're getting a sort of traction between the actual top layer of rubber and the actual sort of surface here on the actual bed. Now, it's important that the bed is flat, that it's as flat as you can get it. You don't want to have or be pressing work on a shaped surface like this. You want it as flat as possible. Okay, so what I've tried to do here is to show you. Let's put this underneath that. Is to show you the reason why I use an actual half round cutter. I hope you can see that on Instagram. So here is our trying to sort of do both worlds. Here is our MDF bed, and this is like a section through that, and it shows the half around here, these half rounds. It looks like a British flag. What can I say? And there's a reason for that. Okay, so you've got half round in here, and the reason is, and there's also a space around this here. This space here is very important. Okay, it looks a little bit like that, I've gone a little bit extra in the middle, but I'll explain that later too. So you've got this space, and this grid is isolated in the middle, not quite in the middle, but on the inside of this panel. That space is very important. But more importantly is the half around. And that is because the rubber, as the air is being pulled out of it, it creates a seal. And you want this layer of power rubber to fall and to flop into that curve there, so that it seals itself in. Once it flops in there and locks in, it will self-seal. And that means that anything that's in between these two outside lines is game. It's basically, if you're in this area here, the vacuum will suck the air out. And this thing here is space, so you can clamp and support that rubber, so that it doesn't flap up, or so the air doesn't sort of creep in. So this is very important. My son, what are you doing? On the other side of that, if you don't use a half round, let's say you decide to use a typical flute cutter, which is a router cutter, and you decide to router these in, you might get away with it. But what happens is that the rubber goes in, has to bend around a sharp corner, bend around another sharp corner again, and you never really get a full seal in the corners. You never get a full seal. And if that happens and this flips up, air can quickly escape into that area, that space can quickly get into that. And basically what happens is that you're constantly pulling on air, and if something happens, the air basically will just rush in a lot quicker, and you will lose your vacuum, and it basically has the potential of leaking. So either YouTube has the potential of leaking, and if you're leaking, you're constantly pulling on the air to try and keep the pressure onto your particular vacuum panel. So that's the theory why I do a groove, like a half round, in the actual panel itself. Now I went a little bit fancy with this one. The reason why I have these particular grooves here is because, just like this piece of wood here, if it goes into this middle area here and goes down flat, and the bag goes over the top and is sealed, air can always escape and get pulled out of the area or the bag or the sheet, and create a vacuum press. So that's why these are like, so it doesn't matter if it's like over here, over here, over here, over there. I mean, essentially what you want to try and do, though, you don't really want to get the bag to cover over the middle. Really, you know, you want to have that sort of covering over, so that the bag doesn't seal itself, or the sheet doesn't seal itself into the flat bed. And then before you know it, this is over here all flapping around, and it's sealed. It can't pull anymore. So that's why we have these grooves. See, that's why we have these sort of lines, basically, all around the inside of this particular MDF bed. I've done another one here to sort of like show what you can do, other designs. It doesn't have to be like a British flag or every corner, okay? If, for instance, I did one and it was just one dot, and I was to put over my panel over the dot, it would pull some air out maybe around here, but it wouldn't do it sufficiently enough, because the air can't really get into that, and it would probably seal around. It might not even work at all, because it would stop itself from pulling all the air around. And that's why we have these things. Now, like I said at the beginning, when you decide to go for your vacuum bed to make it, you want to try and look at, firstly, what sort of space you've got. Okay. What sort of space you've got. How big do you want it? How small do you want? What is your average size product that you're making on that? Is it going to be this big? Is it going to be this big? You really need to start to analyze, look, the sizes that you want, maybe add a little bit. And then from that, you want to decide on the panel size that you're going to create. And then you've got to basically cut some panel up, MDF, do the groove work. Again, allowing some distance inside here. And then you've got to seal this, because if you don't seal this, excuse me, it will start to pull the air out of the MDF. And that means, again, it will be on a constant sort of pull, a constant working process, and you don't want that. Okay. So once you've got your size sorted out, it's basically, I mean, you can buy a full sheet of MDF or ply. You could do chipboard, but chipboard is rather rough and probably not suitable. So I would say go for ply or MDF. MDF to me is ideal as long as you seal it. It's ideal. So you've sealed it. You've got your grooves in. You've got your size that you want. You've ordered your bag. And then what you're going to need to do is to get the vacuum itself, the vacuum. Now, there are different things on the market at the moment where you have a full bag and you get the vacuum and you put the work in, you seal the end, and then you pull all the air out and it will basically pull the bag in. Now, I haven't got... I haven't got a fancy vacuum pump, but it's a very basic one. Okay, on the side here is our pressure. Okay, we have here a filter, because as the vacuum pump starts to pull on the air, it gets to a point when it meets like absolute zero, or it gets to the maximum pressure that it can pull. The engine will keep going, and it can sometimes create smoke. And basically, so there's a filter on here so that the burning oil isn't coming out. Okay, so there's a good filter there. On the front here is like an oil meter, and as you can see, I probably need to fill that up. The place where I bought the vacuum press, I was able to buy some oil. So I'll be able to fill this up there, okay? As long as it basically is on that line, you're okay. That's basically, it's just a guide. And you can buy vacuum oil from most suppliers, especially from the supplier that's going to give you your vacuum press. It was a few hundred euros I bought on this. It was a few years ago. And this is a stage 1 vacuum pump, okay? What else have we got with it? It's not really fancy. It's got an on-off at the back here, and I will get this running in a few minutes, and you can actually see how it works, okay? And the other thing here is on the top here is the actual outlet. So this isn't actually set up for that exactly, but I've got some piping. Because what you've got here is you've got your air that gets pulled out through here. You've got to figure out a way how to get the air from here through there and out into this. And for that, I use piping. Now, I bought the piping from the same company that I bought the vacuum pump from. Hi, everybody. I will be over, by the way, just to check the questions, okay? I'm going to do the questions at the end, and hopefully I can sort of connect with you all, okay? And I hope you can hear me. So this is just basically vacuum pipe. It's pretty strong. And I've got some copper pipe in here, so if I want to, I can go up and down and around. It's a very simple setup. What's important is, on the other side of this here, on the underneath, I actually have like a little metal cap. It's like a little tube thing, and that tube fits in there almost perfectly. You can seal it up with some silicone sealer if you want. Also with these, you can seal them up before you put them in. Okay, but it's such a tight fit. So that will be like underneath the table. And the air gets sucked out through here into this pipe. Okay, you can do like pipes here and there. It depends on, try and keep it as simple as possible and as with minimum amount of pipe as possible. Okay, rubber ones are pretty good. But of course, where your metal comes up underneath there, well, you'll see, because I'll take it apart there and you can see how the structure is of this particular vacuum table. There's a rubber seal on it, and that rubber seal is basically there to prevent any leakage. Any connection point that you create potentially is a leakage point. Okay, and that's what you've got to be really aware of. So keep those points as minimal as to a minimum as possible. So here's our vacuum press. I'm gonna go and plug him in. I'll have a look at the messages. And by the way, if these people come late, it was just a little bit of an introduction. So you can probably rewatch the video again. And of course, thank you for those who watch the video in the future rather than the live event. And I hope that this video is useful for you to make your own vacuum bed. Let me just try and sneak in here. I do apologize, everybody. Let's get some power to this. Now I'm just connecting the wire. There you go. Before I pull it, I would say I did say I would have a chat with everybody. Cool. Hope you're still there. Let's have a quick look. Hey Zav, how you doing, buddy? Hey, if I go. Yeah, good question. This was the reason why I did this with the squares in was to show you that it doesn't really matter. It's the theory behind it. The fact that you've got a panel down that's going to veneer this. The air has got to always find a way to get out. If you do it like so, the bag will seal, and then this isn't going to get any pressure on it. Okay? And as I go through the process, I'll try and explain about why it works, because that's what you want to know as well, really. So you can have a square one. Again, the most important thing is where the air leaves. If you get that so the air can leave, it doesn't matter. You can do spirals and circles as long as the air can escape. That's the most crucial thing. And of course, that they're sealed, okay? So this is just a sheet of MDF. It's got a structure underneath to keep it as flat as possible. And I've got a vacuum underneath that with pipes. And of course, I have my bag. So let's try and take it a step further. Put him over here for now. Now, here we go. Here goes the bag. So let's just get something we can put on temporarily. Okay, we'll just do this. It goes over the top, okay, like that. This goes like so. You've got to be careful when you're moving it. If you move it, the rubber will pull. Sometimes when I put my panels down, I stick them down. Well, this is a base panel. We're going to go into more things later. You can stick them down. I'll show you the process. see if I can get this going. Going to get a lot of noise here. Do apologise. There you go. There you go. You see, it's self-sealed. It's self-sealed. This is why we have these grooves. They seal in and they stop the air from escaping like that. Yeah, it's going to go again. Boom. Gotcha. You know when I said it being quite a thick rubber, if I had a thinner rubber, it would actually fold around that a lot better. But this is like quite thick power rubber, okay? So as you can see, air is escaping through all these parts and pressure's being put on. So there's a small piece. Now sometimes I'll use, you see how the air's gone back? It's not perfectly sealed. I need to give the bed a good clean. Sometimes I'll use paraffin wax over the top to try and get that sort of sheen going, give this a good clean, but the principle's there. Okay. I'll put in here. Now, some of you may or may not know that one of the simple ways of actually pressing marquetry is actually by using panels of wood. And the way that I do it, I put some tape on it to stop it from glue getting in, etc. You put the two together and you use your G-clamps. And then that applies enough pressure. I mean, this is ideal for small panels. But if you want to change your panel size, you know, you're going to start to get a lot of these. Whereas if you've got one vacuum table, you do for all the sizes it's max that you can do, the max. But what I do, you can combine. Have a look at you. You can combine your projects. You see, I've got this thing here. It's got steps on it. Let's see what happens when I put this in. You can combine using the plate technology where you're clamping and vacuum presses. So you can still use them, okay? This could take a little longer. Now, you see what's happening here? Because the bag's being pulled up, it's causing a distortion. And that distortion is enough. If I turn on the vacuum pump, it's just going to get air coming out. So what you do, you have your plan B. Actually, and plan C. Where's the other panel gone? Okay, we'll put that like that. So these pieces of wood can go two ways, like this or like this. And if I could find my other piece of wood, that might be a benefit. Oh, I think I've taken it downstairs. Okay, not the end of the world. Not the end of the world. Put you like that. Put you like that. Now, one thing that I do recommend to people, if you're professionals, this table has got all my equipment under it. I've got all my tools under one footprint. And if I need something, I just get it out. I've got my drill. I've got my jigsaw. I've got my multi-tool. And I've got my staple gun if I need to use it. And I'm not going to tell you what I've got on the other side, but I've got another 4 set of tools as well there too. So everything that I have is close by that I need. Well, that's not the point of this conversation. Come on. I have my trusted little G clamps. I can basically make a box around this, and what that does, it seals. You know, remember this flat piece? Remember this sort of space that we had? It traps the rubber between this seal area. Let's turn this on. You see now? Now that will keep pulling and keep pulling and keep pulling. Again, 2 mil is a little better because you get better definition. What's actually happening now is that because I've raised this up slightly and I've got it in steps, it's actually putting more pressure onto that particular panel. The pressure is still 14, 16 pounds per square inch, but because the elastic or the rubber has got more pull, it's got more work to do, and it's resisting because it's elastic, that is translating into more energy being placed into the panel. And if it goes into the panel, it means that when you're sandwiching them together like so, you're getting a better surface pressure point. So you're getting better pressure. So you're getting a better press, okay? While I've got this set up like this, if you live in a cold country like me, which is like Holland, if you're using certain glues, I'll turn this off. Look at these questions. Cheers, Sav. Yeah, okay, I'll just give me a minute. I'll show you then underneath. I just want to get through this. It's all good. So where was I? So you've got a cold country. You've not really warm, and most of you might know that to speed up the gluing time or the curing time in the gluing process, one of the things that you can do is have warm weather. On a cold day, you know, some glues will actually have the temperature on the back, and if it goes below that, it isn't really going to dry. It needs temperature. Well, I mean, I worked in some cold workshops and we had stuff to do and to glue up, and it was extremely hard. So what we did, we would make like a little box like so, and this is the thing that needs to dry. We would then get some simple ply, whatever, simple ply, and make a dome over the top of the thing, you know, maybe like that, you know, so that you had like a dome going over, seal the ends up. Only on one of the ends, you actually put like a heater. And the heater goes in like in one way, and you put two little holes or one hole the other way so that heat can travel through. And what happens is that the heat transfers itself into the surface of the rubber, through the rubber, into the veneer work, into the woodwork, and dries it a lot quicker. So you can technically speed up your drying process by creating a little dome, two ends, and introducing heat. Okay, again, like I said earlier, it's how you want your setup to go. If you're doing multiple projects at a time, then I would definitely make like a little mini box if it was that crucial. But most of the time for me, I can let it go on for about an hour, normal room temperature, and it's okay. But I'm trying to say that there is an option for you to speed up the gluing process. So I'll pull these off now, and we'll have a look at the underneath so you can see how I've actually got it. You might actually see my table underneath as well too. We'll just go with the flow. So the point of this thing here is you can make little panels of wood, so you can combine your wood panels for pressing in conjunction with your vacuum press. But I'll be honest with you, I've done it pretty well just with the bag. But what I tend to try and do is try and lift it up a little bit, just slightly. So if this was the panel, I would put a panel underneath this, step it in about 1 centimeter, just to lift it up, and then do it, because it's allowing that elasticity in the rubber, power rubber, to be more stronger. But there's a few things you do need. I'm almost there, Zav. There's a few things that you do need to get hold of. This will help you in this process. It's some paper. You'll need to use paper when you're gluing up. To me, it's a really crucial thing for veneering. Newspaper underneath, between your panel and the finish. Now, when I'm doing presentations, sometimes I use big brown paper. You know, it stops it from sticking. And what it does most of all is when there's movement in your rubber, especially in the drying, the rubber doesn't grab hold of the veneer and tug it. So you fix it where it is, and it will sometimes tug it off. So you've always got to tape down your veneer onto the substrate you're doing to make sure it's strong, and then put paper, because the paper allows the rubber to move around and not tug on it. Okay, and what I do sometimes over the paper, over the actual piece, I'll also put some plastic. Okay, and this is just you know, I don't know if you do this, if you go to a supermarket and you can buy flowers from the supermarket and you can wrap them up, and sometimes they have a roll of plastic. Well, this is, I mean, call me a cheapskate, it's okay. This is what this is. It's just low-cost plastic that stops any glue from coming out of the process and sticking to the rubber. Now, I'm using PVA mostly. I might use Cascamite. In the past, I've used Resorcinol, which is a resin. And unfortunately, if you get that in the silicone, in this particular power rubber, it will penetrate the molecules and it won't come off. You have to cut it out. And if you do that, it also makes it non-rigid in that particular area. There is another thing as well, before I forget. I can apply heat to this rubber all day and night long, and it will not have a problem. And what happens is the molecules that get excited through the heat process, you know, they start to excite, they move around a little bit, and they'll move back. Now, some bags, especially in the early years of the vacuum press technologies that they had, they could only do cold setting. And what happened was some people were using bags, introducing heat. The molecules in the plastic or in the rubber, in those bags, were moving around, and then they were setting. So they would pull out the project, but it had like a ghost shape forever set in the bag. So if you do get a vacuum bag that is clear, make sure you read the instructions before you introduce heat if you have to speed it up, okay? But the only reason why I have plastic is because I don't want glue to penetrate my rubber, and this is the last defense, okay? So these are like additional things that you're going to use: paper and plastic. Let's get that down there. Let's get this off, unattach this. I mean, I'll be honest with you, what I like about this is, in theory, I can just move this over there and use, you know, I've got an extra table underneath here, but it means it's so flexible, so easy to move around. Let's get this over here. Yeah. Now I'm going to unattach it, because I don't want it dragging off or dragging up the vacuum press. Let me have a quick look. Oh, it's full of rub. It's full of oh yeah, it's full of paper, not paper, wood. Let me just check. Okay. There you go. Let's have a look, shall we? So here's my metal fitting. I've got a rubber, I think, that came from like what is it, a bike pump. Here's my frame underneath, and I just made like a little support here to split all that machine so it keeps it perfectly flat. And I've also got some extra pipe here, okay. And these here, these are for a jig that I designed and made. I keep them in here nice and safe so I don't lose them. But it gives you the idea of what you've got. And I made a little tunnel here so it would make that easy to get into. But this is it. This is it underneath. And as you can see, it's just as sealed as the one on the other side. It's just as sealed. You want to seal both sides of your MDF because you don't want, you want to, first of all, to keep balance so that you don't actually have a contracting piece of wood. And also to keep it sealed so that when the vacuum is sort of pulling, this is like a solid piece. It's sealed. The air can't get in and it can't get out, if you know what I mean. And it's also sealed at the entrance there. So this is just a simple frame that keeps this flat. And this is my tabletop. This fits on top of that. So I can just take this and move it around if I need to. It has been set up, I must admit, for more long-term use here. Now I think if I just try and get this back into position, which is not that hard. So, let me have a look. Come in. There you go. There's a hole in the middle of my table for router work. So that's okay. Let's get you back in place. There you go. Oh. Go on. Ah, yeah. Okay. There you go. Nothing complicated. Nothing complicated. Let's just check that I've got it roughly in the middle. Okay. One thing I would like to say, extra tools or optional tools is just a little squirty bottle. And the reason why I say this is because some of you may have already know about curly or rippled woods that are very hard. They're not essentially hard to cut, but if you're talking about a rippled veneer, if you cut it when it's dry like that, because of all the shapes, it can distort. And people tend to use like veneer thinners or veneer smoothers or you know, those sort of things. Warm water, or you can get glycerine, also does basically the same thing. But basically, warm water will soften your veneer. Sometimes I used to use burr walnut for shaped pieces for car interiors, and they were a little brittle. They were just a little too brittle, and if you put them in, that brittleness would crack the veneer. But if you put this onto fine mist, you can just before you put it in, you got the glue on just before, and there's just enough water to pull into the veneer to soften it, to stop it from cracking. And that helps with the particular process if you've got tricky veneers in a tricky shaped mold or jig to do. I used to do car interiors, which are full of curves. So it was very important that the veneers that we did in that didn't crack. And this is one of the techniques that we used. I'll be honest with you, I prefer warm water than cold water because you get that little bit extra. So this is an additional tool. We know the paper, we know the plastic cover, and what I'll do I'll have a quick question and answers, and maybe before I finish this up, I'll just put it on one more time. And if I was going to go through the process, just to help you understand how this works, but it's a very simple vacuum bed. That if you've got the hand skills, now you know how you can actually replicate this. Okay, I'll have a quick wander on, see what sort of questions I can do, because we're a distance over there. Come and get me. So let's have a look. Okay, well, thank you guys here on Instagram. Now let's have a look, Sav. What are you going on about? Let's have a like. Yeah. Fago, well done. Excellent. Good point. That's something that I did intend on discussing. It would have probably gone into this part that I was going to go into now. Somebody just asked, what do you think about Cascamite? Well, as a British cabinet maker, as a time-served tradesman, I used to use a lot of Cascamite. They don't use it that much here in Holland, and I thought it was quite odd because there's a lot of good things that you can do with Cascamite. If you're using, let's say, dark brown woods, why don't you get yourself some brown pigment, add some of the pigment to the glue. If you get bleed through, the glue is brown. That's just a little trick, a little tip for you there. Cascamite. Let's go to PVA. PVA is a polyvinyl acetate. It's a white wood glue. This is your typical white wood glue. It's okay. You can get waterproof glues, and in the yachts, you can also have temperature resistant and fireproof or fire retardant, which was very, very important in some of the yachts. It's basically water based. So when you actually use your PVA, you're putting water into your wood, you're putting water into your veneer, and it can distort, it can cause ripples, it can cause the entire thing to curl up. And what happens if you're making laminates? Oops, Daisy. Let's pull you off. Let's say these are my laminates, and I'm making this shape. This is actually lots of veneers, but imagine they're constructional veneers, and I'm making a shape like so. Let's just see what we can do. There we go. So I'm making a shape like this. I've got my mold, my jig. When you use PVA, it's okay, but because of the water content, the water goes into the wood on one side, into the wood into itself, into the wood on the other side. And to some degree, you do get a very flexible sort of laminates, okay? But the disadvantage is, if it's not cured enough, the glue, because it's like a rubbery sort of substance, it has a tendency to slowly creep back. In other words, it will straighten itself out. Sometimes not enough, but you've got to be aware of that if you're doing shaped components, because I tend to say to people, do a trial run first, because you might have to modify or allow certain curve percentages into the design to allow it to basically shape back to the shape that you want, because it will slightly distort back. Okay. Now, on the other hand, Cascamite, it does use water, but it's more of a resin. And what happens with resin is where the rubber glue is sort of still, these molecules are very flexible and giving and elastic. When the resin sets, those molecules are pretty much in place. So they don't move as much. And if you combine Cascamite with a heated process, what happens is that the heat draws it into the wood more, and the glue more, so it's a lot more stable. But years ago, I did an extremely complicated design, and what I used was like a pure resin. It was a clear resin. And what happened was, it was a 2-pack resin. It was slow based, and I did it because I knew I had to minimize my spring back. I had to minimize my veneer from bending back, my laminates. So I used like a 2-pack resin. It was clear. And what happened was, because it was 2-pack, it was a chemical process. When a chemical process goes off, it creates heat. And when it creates heat, it makes it more, the entire wood a lot more flexible. But what you've got there, you've got a self-drying, a self-curing glue. And I found that was far more successful than using the PVA and even the Cascamite. So much so, what I did, I never used a vacuum press. I actually made a box and I put sand in it. And I actually used it's a very old traditional technique where you can push a shaped part into sand, and the sand acts like the negative of that particular mold. So I was just clamping them into sand and pressing them. The glue was going off, it was curing itself. So I think that half a day I was pulling them out and there was like practically no movement whatsoever. It was like perfect. I was really impressed with that. So to answer the thing about Cascamite, I prefer Cascamite, to be honest with you, over PVA. PVA tends to creep, it distort, spring back, mainly because of the amount of water content that's in that. Okay, so that's a thing, a little bit about glues. Now what I'll do, let's have another read of these guys here. Yes, the rubber. It's I can't honestly say if it's actually silicone or latex, but it's called power rubber. Zav, it's called power rubber. I think I have the receipt somewhere. I mean, I bought this years and years ago, and I think I still have that as for a part of my business. So I've still got the business receipt, but I know it as power rubber, and I bought it in a shop in Amsterdam, and they did rubber supplies. Let's not go there on rubber, but you know what I mean. So they did rubber components and stuff, and that's where I picked that up. What I'll do now, I'm going to go through a pretend gluing process. Okay, so we're going to pretend to go through it. Okay. All right, so my rubber is there. I'm going to now pretend, I'm going to pull this out, by the way. I don't have got a thin panel. Let's have a quick look. All right, well. We'll have to pretend a little bit. So let's have a quick look here. What I did, what happened. Yeah, okay, you'll do. You will do. If I'm gonna veneer a panel, as a cabinet maker, you should always put another veneer underneath. And that would be called a balancing veneer. So sometimes it's a cheaper veneer. Sometimes it depends if it comes down to the fact is anything going to be seen on the other side? Is the other side as important as the side that you want your artwork on? If it's not seen, it's up against the wall, you can use a cheaper, a lesser important veneer. But if it's important, it's like a door and people will open it and see it, it's very important. You can either put Marquetry on it, or you can choose a nicer veneer and also connect it by using certain veneering techniques that sort of suggest that it's actually solid. So you would do solid lipping, for instance, to make it look like it was solid wood, because you're emulating with wood and veneer, emulating it as being solid. You're using a little bit of trickery, you know, it's a little facade veneer, it's a little veneer facade, and you're trying to use techniques to make it look as exceptional as possible. Okay, but if it's not important, you'll use a cheaper veneer. We've got our balancing veneer and we've got our top veneer. So what I would do, prepare myself. And one good tip for everybody who's using a vacuum press or any kind of veneer pressing or any kind of process, always go through it first of all. I recommend this to everybody, students, stagiaires, interns, people I've taught, semi-professionals. Always do a dry dummy run. So you could say that this, what I'm doing now, is a dummy run, okay? Always do it, because what happens is if you're halfway through and you think, oh, my glue, I'm run out, where's my glue? Oh, I've run out of glue. You don't want to be halfway through your project and then find you've run out of glue. You don't have tape. Maybe the power's cut. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. And while you go through it, some people say, oh, well, I just like to get on with it, and go fast. The problem is, if you do that, if you trip yourself up in the real process, you will panic, you will mess up, and you will make it worse. In fact, sometimes you'll make it worse because of all the cascading effect of what's going on. The glue is going off. Just imagine if you're using Cascamite and you've got it already. You've only got maybe 5-10 minutes, maybe, depending on the type or what sort of things you've got, retardants you've got in it, etc. But the clock is ticking. And if you've just messed up, you can severely ruin everything you've done. So try and always do a dry run. So we'll pretend that this is a dry run, but we can go through this veneer pressing. So I've got my backing veneer. So what I would do first, sometimes I might mark an X or a Y so that I know one of these sides, for instance, I want as the top, and one of these sides I want as the base. I'll put B, for instance. Okay. Oh, come on. I think 4 is too much, but 2 is usually enough for me. I'll put my paper on. I apply glue. I glue it. I use my thing, I use my roller, whichever technique of glue you use, make sure your edges are done. That's the back. I put that on, flip him over, position him, he's good. The back, that means if there's any distortion as the water goes into the veneer, if there's anything that's going to happen now, the wood is on top of it, keeping it flat. And you're working on it, so it keeps it flat. If you don't, then it makes it very hard, and you don't really want to be doing your front first, because if you've got a wonderful fancy sort of veneer work going on there, like so, and it's messing up, you're basically leaving it to mess up for longer. So always use your final piece last. So the base is done. Yeah, we're good. Glue process, like so. The veneer over the top. I position it. I get my tape. I position my. Sometimes you've got to do over the edge. My tolerance is about 1.5 mil to the max, because I don't want it sticking over too long. So I have about 1.5 mil, and that's my tolerance. So I stick it down. Get your tape ready. So it's stuck in position. That's okay. You know what? Just to be on the safe side, I don't want this thing moving around. I'm going to tape it because of the rubber. I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to tape it down. You see, I've got enough air that's going to go through though, so it's fine. Yeah? So nothing's going to happen to it. That's good. Thing over the top. Position it. It looks good. It's good. Again, I'm going to put my tape over the top here, because as the, excuse me, this is why we have plastic. If I do forget that, at least I know that it's not going to be wood gluing to wood. Now let's have a look at another one. So I like all my tools are right next to me. Put you over here. This goes in between. The good thing about paper is when the glue comes out, it goes into your paper, And like I say, it allows any movement to go on. It's the paper that gives and not the veneer. It's a very crucial thing that people forget in industry about not using paper. They use plastic sheets or whatever, and it's all about things. Paper is a magical thing to use. Let's put this back. Just doing this by eye. That's good. Put you back. You back. And I'm just going to put a little bit of tape here and here, like that. Now, I could have put the plastic over the top. There we go. Both falling to pieces now. There we go. Here you go. Nice. Okay. So I did put my plastic in between that. That's fine. Okay. Now we can get the thing over the top. Up you go. Actually, it's a little bit off. Actually, off the center a little bit. Let's see how we get on with that. I don't like it. Ah, my bad. Oh. That's good. I'm trying to centralize that as much as possible. Okay. When I was doing it, I didn't quite spot that, but the good thing is a practice. So now I know. And if I wanted to, it was so important to me, I could put tape around to say this is where my center is as a guide. Let's fold this over now, like that. Again, I'm getting this little problem here. You see that? It is good as gold. So let's get the big one in here. I'll put that there like that. Like that. I think you're good. You seem to be there. Put that there like that. Little fast little C clamps like this. Put one there. Put one there like that. Let's turn him on. It's coming down. There you go. It's coming. Live on YouTube. There you go. Again, if I use 2mm power rubber, this would be a lot less. Okay, this would be a lot less. But you can just feel the tension in that. You can just feel it, and that's perfect. So I'm using my panels of wood to press my veneer. When I use this thing, more energy is going into the middle, because sometimes you get a lot of tension around the outside, and well, not enough, but you will get it in the middle. But that's what I'm always frightened of, is that we need the energy in the middle. Now this is atmospheric pressure that's basically being brought into consideration here, and that's about 14.7 average pounds per square inch, I believe, PSI. So that's quite a lot. Let's have a look at some questions. Yeah, thank you guys. Let's have a look. I'll tell you what I will do now. I'm going to pull you over here. Guys. Turn that off. Because I believe... Oh, sorry about this. Oh. Do some question and answers. Let's have a look at you. Let's have a look. So I've got some questions going on here. Instagram. I have a workbench oven by 70. Okay, that's quite thick. Okay. Yeah, I think that if you've got a vacuum bed, a vacuum bag, and it won't fit in, and if you're not able to get to, if you could contact a company, maybe local, that has a veneer press. To me, that would be the best option at those sizes, okay, for you. So let me just get my head around this, because let me have a look at this. So this, I guess it's, yeah, millimeters, okay, by 70, okay. I mean, in theory, you can get a full sheet of MDF, do what I did, okay, then get a big bag and seal it and etc. And you would possibly be okay with a good vacuum and having a good power rubber. Again, I would probably go for the 2 mil. Maybe for you that thing, yeah, I think 2 mil should be fine. You could do what I did by putting that thing between 2 sheets of MDF, or doing a sample first to see how well the vacuum is going to pull down. It should be okay. It should be okay, but I'm always one for trialing. So what you could do, Fago, is veneer one side of the panel with just pure veneer, like backing. See how that reacts. If you're happy with it, then you can move on. And then you can do the parquetry on the other side. It won't matter if it distorts in that time, because you're repressing it with a balancing veneer. So you should be fine with that, okay? The other thing to do, which is like a short-term thing, is to get some panels of MDF, slightly oversized, and use those bearings. I don't know if you're aware of this, but you can do a bearing on top, a bearing underneath, and you can clamp it. And there's a technique though. And what I'll do, it might be easy for me to send you some pictures through, but you put a slight curve in that piece of wood. So let me have a look. So instead of the wood being flat, it's got a curve here, so that it basically puts more pressure in the middle of your workpiece. And what we would do, we would make this gap here about maybe 5 or 6 mil. So this would be back. That's 5 or 6 mil above. And when you clamped it, depending on the wood, if it bent in slightly, you would get energy here. And when it bent in, you get energy here and here into the panel, so you get the middle and the outside. Okay, that's a special bearing, but you can basically use bearings if it's not going to work. That size isn't too bad, actually. But a friend of mine has just bought a big vacuum bag, and he just put it in, and it seemed to work okay. Vacuums are really good for doing shape work. So what do you suggest I do? I just sort of like tried to do that. Okay, I hope that's answered. I hope that's answered some of your questions, Fago. If not, I think we'll reach down and I'll try and make some more suggestions for you. And failing that, what we can do, I can, when I connect with you, I can set up a Zoom session, and we can talk through it, and we can discuss sort of options, and I can draw things then, and explain things and get some pictures together to show you. So that would be a benefit if you want someone to sort of like talk you through this. Okay, so it's not a problem. Yeah, I hope that helps. But the biggest thing that people do, they do a lot of work on the parquetry, and then they rush into it. You've really got to think through what you're doing. I'm sure that you do, okay? And obviously do mock-ups, do practice pieces, because you don't want to spend hundreds of hours on your veneer work and then mess it up because you rushed it, okay? That's my bit of advice for you there, okay? Let's have a look. Zav, okay, you said, would you press the back veneer at the same time as the top one? Normally I do. Normally I do, because it's done and dusted. But if you've got some tricky edging, some tricky lipping around, and you want it all to line up perfectly, there's no harm in doing one side at a time, okay? But generally they are done together. But the theory is that your vacuum, your pressing process makes it flat anyway, and there's not enough distortion in that time frame for that little bit of veneer, while it's still supple, to be actually putting in or taking out any of those tensions. So in theory, you can do it the second side after, but mostly for production wise and cabinet making, we tend to press them both at the same time. But like I said, you've got some tricky stuff. You want to be a bit more careful. Take your time. Do one side at a time. And within the time frame that you're working, it isn't really, everything's flexible. Everything's still going. So you should be fine to do that, okay? And even a week or so after, you know, again, when you're pressing it flat. So it should be generally okay. Yeah, you don't want to use contact glue. Yeah, I mean, I used to use contact glue on the edging. And what I would do when I use contact glue, get a little pot, find out the medium, so it could be thinners. I think with contact glue, it's toluene. Get toluene. I think it was R10 or R2. There's a trade name for it now. Good heavens, years ago. And that you can thin up some of the glue. This is my little trick for you. And I do this when I do RPLs as well. And people go, what are you doing? And they don't realize that they're spending up all this dust and all this crap. It goes onto the glue, and then you get little bits of RPL, bits of wood dust. I need a clean environment. Seal it by having a weaker version. So I mix up my glue with some thinners or toluene, and then I seal it in one time, twice, and it's sealed. And then the third time, when I put it on, you're not getting the drawing. And what you find is, because it's already tacky, it's already the same material, it's amazing. It's like bang, done, and there's no messing. It's like it's so sticky. The problem that I've had in the past is if you just do one coat, sometimes the dust in the MDF or the wood will basically peel off. It's like, oh yeah, you know, but if you seal it, you do a great job. It's thinner, so it goes in more and it's a lot quicker. So that's a tip. And I can assure you, I've seen some people using a brush and they just paste it on. I'm like, oh my God. Once you get the glue and it's all blodgy, it's hard work to get that right. And with some RPLs, like black RPL, HPL, which is high pressure laminate for those people, it will just telegraph through, shine. Oh God, it's terrible. And those little bits of wood that have been thrown around the workshop because someone's machining next to you, and they just don't care about the quality, it just will totally mess it up. And you'll see these little pimples over your work. What are you gonna do? You know, there's ways around it, but never mind, that's another thing. Don't want to use contact. Is there any particular power spec of the pump you're after? That's a good question, actually. I've got all the specs on there. I mean, mine's 240 or standard power as regards. It's generally the pounds per square. I mean, mine's, was it pi, 5 pi, so it goes minus bar. So you want to be looking at the minus bar, or the amount of pressure it can suck out in the vacuum, okay? You don't really want to be getting like a 3-phase power thing. It's way too powerful. Most of the vacuum pumps that are available right now are, let me move these over a little bit. Let's have a look. I hope you're still there, everybody. Oh. I'm talking to there you go. All right. Sorry about that. So, particular power spec of the pump you're after. What I would do, it depends where you're buying it from. I think you said you was in, like, was it Sweden or something like that? Bonjour, Xavier. You really want to start looking at reviews of vacuum pumps and seeing what other customers have said and done. Also, maybe look for vacuum suppliers. You want one that's compatible to your power source. You don't want to be buying a three-phase one or a big industrial one like that. I'll be honest with you, I've never seen one in my life, but there are big vacuum pumps out there that have got like a big door that lifts up and pops over, you know, blah blah blah. So maybe that would be helpful. If you're going to buy one, you can always send me a copy of what you're going to buy. I can have a look at it. But you know, most of them are reliable. What is important is that you get all the tubing that matches up with that valve, the head of the valve. That all your tubing is all consistent. There's always a way around things, but you don't really want to be messing about. Most of the time, they will send you all the okay, I get it. They will send you all the piping should fit that one particular thing. Just gonna get this out for you out. I will be honest with you. They might be bloody small, these, but they're heavy. They're chunky sort of things. So I'm just now going to look at this for you. The things you do for love. The things you do for love. Power 1/4 HP, oil capacity, voltage, vacuum 5 pa, so pascals, whatever it is, or pressure bar. 3-year displacement, 1.5. Yeah, model. Doesn't really say much on there. Okay. But for me, it's just a standard vacuum pump with and I just made sure that on the specifications that I found out what the head was of the valve where they take the actual where the air comes out, and that is like that's like there. Yeah, so I made sure that all my parts fitted that. You know, like I said, the more parts, the more complicated it is, the more you get leakage. In theory, if you have a good sealed unit, you should be able to turn it on, turn off a little air tap, and it stay consistent. It should, you know, in theory, but like anything, there is always leakage. And that's why you're trying to look at how to minimize that. Yeah, you know, there are I mean, I will look at the reviews, see what other people have said. You know, when we're using big bags of vacuum bags, some of them have like a big extension hole on them, on these vacuum presses, on these vacuum bags. Okay. And the trick is what you can do, you can get like an industrial cleaner, you know, your vacuum cleaner, stick it up to that. Use that to take out most of the air, because one of the problems is if you've got a big bag, you've got big air, it takes a while for it to come out. So what you would do, you'd suck all the air out as much as you could with your home handy vac, and then seal it up. Okay, while the bag was compressed down, and then you would flip on the vacuum so that it saved you time. Okay, that was one way that we would do it. But again, the best thing to do is maybe send me some pictures. Okay, you can't really go wrong if they've got good reviews. Strength is okay. Sound is important. Look at the sound, because you don't want to be wearing earmuffs all the time. And I'll be honest with you, when I do my veneering with this, I'll leave it on for an hour. I have it on for an hour to be on the safe side. Yeah, because most like PVA is done in half an hour. You got 45 minutes extra. If it was freezing cold, I will probably heat it up. I don't often do it in that cold. My house is pretty warm, or my studio is pretty warm, so it's not too bad. And yeah, so I usually just do an hour and then turn it off. And then like take the tape off. It's always been okay for me. Okay, let's have a look. Did the thing. What was I going to say? One of the advantages that I like about the vacuum press is that you can do shaped work. You can do shape work. So you would make a jig. Let's say you did like half circle. But let me assure you, don't be fooled by that little noisy vacuum chunking on in the background, okay? Because it will, they're very strong. I've seen jigs and templates broken, okay? And I'm going to bring you back over. Don't know why I did that. I'm sorry about that, Instagram. Very sorry about that. For those who are watching for this long, thanks a lot. I do hope it's been helpful. So the thing about these machines and vacuums is that if you don't make a good jig, strong jig, they will basically crumple it or find any weakness in your structure of your former, your mold. Okay, so you've got to make them as strong as possible. And this is why I say to people, always do a dummy run. Because it's happened a few times. I've seen it done in the workshop. They do these things, they cut corners, and they think, you know what, if you've got a square and you cut all the corners off and you keep cutting corners off, eventually you get a circle. And that means what you cut off comes back to you. So you cut your nose off sometimes to spite your face. You think you're saving yourself time, but what you do by cutting the corners, by not making your jig and mold strong enough, you actually end up collapsing it, because these things are pretty strong. And remember, any airspace that you've got is being sucked out. And there's always that tendency for something to fill it. And if your structure isn't strong enough, it will collapse. But if you do a tester, the moment you hear it going crunk, turn it off, figure out where it's going wrong and sort it out. Okay. But I do like jigs. I do like laminating. Vacuum presses allow you to do one mold and let the atmospheric pressure do the rest. Okay. They're fascinating and they're wonderful little machines that uses like science to actually achieve its goals. Okay, for me, it's space saving. Okay, it's a table that I can work on, I can do things on, and when I need to vacuum, I just flip it over and turn it into a vacuum press. But you won't see me drilling holes on this bench. I have another one over there, and before I do tasks like this, I always think through what I'm doing. Let's have a look. Would the rubber mat work over curved work? No, this is for shaped work, really. Vacuum presses are ideal for shaped work. Half circles, overloos, whatever you want to call them. It will work on shaped work. The thing is, the bigger your jig is, or the bigger your mold, the more that it starts to pull on the rest of your sheet or your blanket, Zav. So again, I would put my jig in, see where I could basically bring it down to its minimum, but allow a little bit of play. And then, of course, when I was ready, I would actually put it in, seal it up around the edges by using my G clamps, and then start to see what's going on. Okay, there's quite a lot of give in this with the rubber, but it's also ideal for shape work. And you'll be amazed at the amount of energy that these things can pull down. I'll tell you, I did a demonstrations when I used to teach years and years ago. I did this design that went like this, yeah. And this was the mold. It went like that. So, and we put these panels in, these thin, I think it was pine laminates or whatever it was. And I'm doing this demonstration to show how to use a vacuum press for these college students. And there's a big guy there called Randall, big guy. I said, Randall, come over here. I said, I want you to push down on this for me. And he pushed and he shoved his big muscles, shoved, and he could get it. No, he said, I can't do that. I said, well, okay. Well, that's fantastic. Thanks, Randall. I just wanted to know if like what sort of thing you'd have to do. Well, if I could do, that might work. I said, okay, let's have a look. Put it in, bam, 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 and it just pulled it down. And everybody went, wow. That's how strong these things are. Okay, so if you do get a vacuum press, and it relies oil. Read the instructions. Get an extra tub of oil. Definitely get an extra, because at some point it will use that oil up. Okay. Okay. Let's have a look. CFM. Okay. Yes. Mine's 1.5 CFM. Okay. That's my one here is 1.5. Sorry about that, Zav. I missed that question, probably because it was too technical, and I thought I would get away with not answering it. No, I'm only joking. Yeah, so flat work is always, yes, always a thing that I'm always worried about when I'm doing flat work, which is part of the reason why I did the thing with this step, like the pyramid effect, because I'm always concerned about in the middle. But I've done some panels, all those panels that you saw the other day, which was parquetry and circles on, they were all done on this, okay? And one word of warning that I would do if you're doing fancy parquetry or marquetry and you're using the thin veneer, word of warning, it's caught me out once or twice. When you've got solid wood, you sand it, okay, and it's smooth, like smooth as a baby's bottom. It's so smooth, it's beautiful, and there's a technique where you get a damp rag and you put that over the top, so you wet it. And what happens was the wet moisture, all the fibers of wood that you've got in the fiber, they all expand and they stand up like hairs. Yeah, they'll stand up. And then what you do, you go over it again with sandpaper, you cut them off. So you make it even more finer and make it more smoother. And that's the final sort of cut before you will spray it. If you're doing marquetry and parquetry, sometimes when you're doing the gluing process, unless it's an industrial press, which uses like tons of pressure and heated, if you're doing it at home, there's always a chance that there's some dust or it's not a perfect adhesion. If you start throwing water onto your veneer, you'll find that bubbles appear or can appear. So what I do now, I don't put water on my marquetry. I don't do the sort of final touch with damp water. I'll leave that as it is, okay? And if you get that, you've basically got to slice under these bubbles and get glue in. Okay, it's a pain in the ass. And the only way that you'll get this problem is by applying water, damp water to your veneer, thinking that you're taking the dust off and clean it up. Be careful. That's my warning to you, okay? Because it's happened to me a few times, and it really is, it's painful if you can't fix it. Yes. I know the ones with the threaded thing. Let me just have a look. Have I got? I got you covered. Now I'm back. I know what you mean, Zav. Yeah, they're okay. You can make your own. There's a better way though. Anyway, this isn't one of them. Years ago, I had to make some frames for some super yachts, some big door frames, and we didn't have those big clamps at the time. So what I did, I embedded so I had like a stop at one end and a stop at the other, where the frame would drop in, and then I basically used this little thing, and this was like threaded. So inside of the threaded thing in there, and it would push. So I had like four or five of these things, all pushing the frame together from one end, because that was the construction. It was good enough. It did the job. It shows you how you can use threaded little things like this to do that. And these, I think they're called donkey threads or donkey things. They're okay. You're really looking at putting the energy in the middle for those things, and also the construction of the device itself has to be very strong. But there's also another way, and that is you make a very similar sort of construction. And you know your car jack, you got a car jack for your car to lift the wheels up. You've got those hydraulic ones, haven't you? You know, little pots there. I think they're like £25, £12, you know, and it only moves up like so far, whatever it is, but it's enough to take the wheels off the ground. But this thing will move tons. So you have basically a similar setup where you've got like your base, you got your base, you got a thing in between, so you've got your two boards, okay, and then you have these two things in the middle with a bar across. Make them in the metal or wood. So it depends how big it is. You know, you really got to think sometimes how big you want to make your particular press, and then you have one there, and then click, 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 and what happens is it pushes them up. It pushes the thing apart. Always start your pressing in the middle if you can, because that is where it's at its weakest. Same with this vacuum thing. Around the edge, that's when you're getting the elastic in, you know, you're getting the elastic in on the edge. That's okay. But in the middle, because of that sort of distance, you might not be getting the sort of tension that you need. Okay. So that's my thing. And it's also the same when you're using contact adhesive. Start from the middle, work your way out. Okay. So if you think of that as a guide, you can't go wrong. Yeah, the bookbinding, that's another name for them. Yeah. Sometimes they just have one. I think I saw one the other day. There was like three of them, these things. More the better. Okay. Um, but I always at the same time I say try not to put too much glue on and try not to overpress. In the industry of the yachts, they have some problems sometimes. They apply too much pressure, the glue bleeds through. Um, and that can be a problem with some of the finishes, especially with they're using wood glue, white wood glue, which is why I like Cascamite, which I said earlier, and being able to apply. What I used to say to them was, look, we've got a new veneer coming in, got a new project. Let's make a few samples and let's introduce pigments into the PVA or into the glue. And then if we do get bleed through, it's a color bleed through. It looks a lot like the wood itself. Okay, pigments, natural earth pigments, but you're thinking ahead and then you're doing the test to see if that pigment is actually affecting the strength of the glue or not. So quite a lot of tips there. Yeah, yeah, you know, it's another way of looking at it. Okay, in theory, if you've got a strong house, you can put a beam, two planks, and a jack, and let the roof of your house be the press, because it's the resistance that you're getting in between that's creating the pressure. You know, you're just creating a little gap, putting your stuff in, and then using the gap to create that filling up the gap, and then the resistance of holding up the house. There's lots of stuff that you can do if you're into metal work, and you can make a metal structure. All the better resistance for you. You know. But I think car jacks are easy. Watch out for the oil, because some do leak. and you don't want oil on wood. You don't want it leaking around the sides. You don't want to get oil onto your surface of your wood or your veneer. So you've really got to be careful. Also, if you're using it, you know, you're doing like a few things. You get oil on your hands, getting into the wood. You don't want that. So you've really got to be careful with these hydraulic pumps. These car jacks, if you do get oil. I mean, I've seen a few that have been a bit leaky, because you've got to take to loosen the energy out of them. You've got to loosen the things which lets the oil move about, basically. So yeah, I mean, it's what I tend to do when I'm creating stuff like this. I tend to look at what I'm making, how flexible I can make it for other things, how much space it's going to take, and how much work has got to be done. And then I start to look at the physics of it. Like, where do I need the energy to go? What about the other energy? What am I going to do? Am I going to use a combination of, like, you know, threads and then G clamps, because you're trying to get a balance of pressure, you know? Also, have a look for companies that are in your area that have got a vacuum, that have got an industrial press. You know, have a chat with the manager. You might have to pay a little bit. They might want a favor in return. They might say it's okay, you know. And you've also got to, depending on how busy they are, you've got to talk to them about the scheduling. So, look, can I come in at a weekend then? Can I come in and talk? Can I come in and do it the weekend? Is someone around? You know, you've got to like do a little bit of persuasion, or you say, okay, what are your time slots? When do you think? Because a manager, they're filling it up all the time. You know, it's like, okay, well, there's nothing going on next Thursday. I've got like a 2-hour space. You could fit you in then. You know, it's just communication, really. And sometimes you get companies that don't use them. That they've got it there and they use it for one particular task, and that task isn't always in the production line. So it's you've just got to figure it out. Other than that, it's using your noggin, solving problems. How are you going to make it? Look online, look at the construction that they use, you know. And remember, when you're putting energy into this, you're getting resistance, you're getting things moving. You know, the things are being stretched or expanded. Where does that energy go to? Because the last thing that you want to be doing is using the wrong material or the wrong grain direction in your panels or your support bars, and then crack again. You didn't do a test. You know, it's all last minute, and then, oh gosh, you know. That's one of my biggest tips to people, is do dry runs and think through the things that they're doing. So to sum this up, this was a handmade vacuum press, consisting of MDF, a lacquer, some machine grooves marks from a hand router, a support frame, so that you can allow the pipe to come out from the underneath, so that it would run to the vacuum pump, to keep your pump pipes as small or as minimal as possible, so that you've not got like meters and meters of cable around. Keep it close by. You've got to be able to turn it on and off, so you've got to have power. You've got to look at the power rubber, which I talked about in the previous discussion about this, and I would personally use, like I said, 2mm power rubber for veneer work, because it's a lot more give. Yeah, you got your lacquer in to do some panels or some bits of wood around the edge to seal. And let me just see if I can. Well, now you're here, I might be able to do a little bit of the old theory. Have a look. So that was the drawing. So this is your bed. This is your half round that's been routed in, and this is your rubber sheet. Okay. And what happens is that it falls into the groove and seals. It's very essential that it seals. If you don't do, you're getting this going on. That's the one with the round. Square one has gaps. and that will leak a lot more and have your vacuum working a lot more. And if you look above here, this is my table bed. These are my little grooves, which always allow air to be taken out by the pump. They get sealed here and here, but essentially your work is here, inside this bag, inside this sheet. And as the air gets sucked out, this bag gets wrapped around this panel and pulls on it. And it uses atmospheric pressure, that's the pressure on the outside of the bag, to actually do it. Okay. And back to your question of, like, you know, can you do squares, Zav? You know, I just did it like that because it doesn't matter where you put it in here. If you cover that, air can always escape. It should have been like that, actually, sorry, my bad. Air can always escape. And these panels here just go over the top of that so that it can flatten any irregularities in the actual rubber mat if it starts to, if you've got a big jig in there, for instance, you know. So there's the actual bed itself. This is the outside edge that you need clearance, and these are some simple panels. Okay, and like I said, if you tip them up like that and clamp them down, you can create like a mini box around your vacuum and then put in a piece of wood or like a dome in that, so you can introduce heat, and that will speed up your gluing process as well. Maybe a side wave then, if you want to. What I mean, if it's a 3D shape, I mean, I've done steering wheels. I've made jigs for steering wheels for Range Rovers, Rolls-Royce, Lexus, and some pretty interesting shapes. Okay, you can make supports. One of the suggestions was like using sand. This is a traditional technique of veneering. Only they used to use hot sand many years ago, and they would just embed it into the hot sand. And because they used animal glue, you know, that was just recently put on, it was going jelly. As it went in there, the heat from the sand would re-soften the glue, and because the veneer was positioned, it would just basically merge together perfectly. Very sophisticated, but very simple, you know, very simple indeed. So let me get my head around 3D shape, fit the kind of sock bag. I mean, I'm trying to get my head around what you're saying. Potentially, you could, to some degree, hold something, and what you've got to do is the surface that you're going to try and veneer onto, you're trying to get it at the top, so that the energy of the press is actually going onto it. You can do it on the side too, but you're trying to bit, and therefore you're holding it into position. Okay, and what you're also trying to look at is, remember, like the pyramid effect that from that little jig, that thing that I did. You're trying to make it as smooth as possible so that the flow of the bag isn't going in and out. Okay, you've got to basically get in, get to the pressure point, and then get off. Okay. Um, I'm just thinking about this 3D thing. You know, it reminds me of like when they do resin castings of um, very complicated sculptures. They have 3 or 4 parts that will do all around it. Okay, um, that could be an interesting sort of concept, as you might say, but using the pressure of the vacuum bag around to create that sort of energy. There's something else that comes to mind that I'm thinking of. Yeah, when we did the steering wheels, I was the guy who was the one who had to design these jigs. Me and the boss, we would work together, and he would say, "Oh, okay, I'm going into town," and he would leave me to finish it off, so I'd have to think about it. We used to do one side at a time, and we would sometimes multiple veneer it. So we would veneer it once with a veneer, bring it out, veneer the other side, and then veneer over. So we would overlap, like it was generally like burr walnut. And you couldn't tell really sometimes where that line was because the wood was the same. Okay. But one thing that you've got to watch out for is if you have these gaps, I'll be honest with you, I did it once and I forgot to put the cap on the top. You can imagine where the holes are, where your steering wheel is. You got like those holes. I forgot to put the cap on that I designed, and the cap was there, and it was stepped in so that the veneer could come over, so that the energy could come over, stick down to the rim of the steering wheel, but not enough that it would actually go in too deep. So it had to come around, and it was done in a way so this cap would stop the rubber from pulling in because it's a vacuum. And what I did, I was rushing one day, I just basically forgot to put the cap on, put it in, thing over the top, things on, vacuum on, dome on, end on, heater. I'll make a quick coffee. About 15 minutes later, boom. The boss comes out of the office, the guy comes out of the spray booth, the guy from what's going on? I said, I don't know. So I looked inside and the cap wasn't on. And what it had done, it bent, it sucked in the bag. So much so, and with the heat making it more supple, the rubber, it popped. So we had to get a new bag. Lesson learned. So these things are pretty strong and they're very good at shapes. Yeah. I mean, for those of you who are still on here, I'm very happy to set up Zoom sessions so that we can talk a lot easier. I don't know if you remember the Facebook group all about marketing. I tend to set up like sessions on Wednesdays. I've got a session with somebody on this weekend talking about how to do marketing, the process. So I'm happy to do that. This was the entire idea is basically to share my knowledge in a live session with the world, with you guys, with Instagram, because I can be wasting this here and doing it all alone, and it would be going to waste. But the advantage about Zoom sessions is you can set them up and you can talk to people. You can have a chat. You can see the work. I have two cameras up, so I zoom in. Sometimes I do veneering techniques. But I'm very happy to help you with your projects. Very happy to say, look, yeah, there's a lot in here, and I'm happy to share this knowledge. So this is a little frustrating. I mean, I love this, don't get me wrong, but I can imagine like you want to ask questions where we could be doing it easier. Now in the future, what I might do, to be honest with you, Zav, is set up a Zoom session while I'm doing the live. I think I did that the other day, and then what I'll do when I post this up onto YouTube, it will say underneath Zoom session, and then if you click on that, you will join that room. So if you say, "Look, I've got a question," join the Zoom session, and then it'll be like, "Okay, we're doing the demo now. I can talk to you now. We can ask person to person." Is that an idea for you guys? Would that be helpful? Because then I can do my live event. I can also talk to people. You don't have to have your camera on if you don't want. You can just tape it up. I don't have to see your face. Yeah. I mean, you're getting to look at my ugly mutt all the time, but it's an option, because I generally do like talking about. I do like this sort of this technical thing of furniture making. Okay. And being a furniture designer maker myself, I love being creative with my solutions, And part of this is to try and share as much as I can about how people can make their own vacuum beds, What can I say? I think I'm at the end of this session. I hope for everybody on YouTube and also Instagram out there that this has been benefit. I can see some gentlemen here have benefited from the question and answers. I'm very happy about that and happy that I can help them. But as for now, my time is up, and I'm going to say farewell. Please subscribe. Join me on Facebook, Reddit, of course, YouTube. Like, subscribe. You know, I'm not really into the promotional thing, but my wife says I've got to say it. And hopefully I will see you guys in the future. If you've got something you want to talk about, or you're interested in something that you would like me to try and express or go into, or to elaborate on, you know, just send me a message, or send, and I'll see what I can do to try and do a live session about solving that one particular problem. But as for now, I thank you all for coming, and all the future viewers who watch this to the end on YouTube, and all those on Instagram. I just like to say thank you very much, and hopefully we will see you in the next one. Have a good night, gentlemen. Have a good one. Thanks for the comments.